Fem Forte is sponsored by Ultimate Drillbook. UDB app modernizes marching band. Spend less time, have more fun, and achieve at a higher level. Just upload your drill from Pyware into the UDB app, and everyone in your band gets animations with your show music, precise pathways, synced music, notes, props, and so much more. It's just easier. Head to ultimatedrillbook.com and use code FEMFORTE when you order to get 20% off UDB App Pro. Fem Forte is sponsored by Beam Music. Are you tired of making copies and printing your music? Beam is the app that will make you actually like distributing music. Organize with collections, create set lists, keep track of time, and share powerful annotations on your sheet music. You know that feeling when you call up a stand tune and everyone frantically looks for the music? Those days are over. Activate live mode to automatically connect everyone in the ensemble to your device. When you select a piece of music, everyone's individual parts for that song are instantly displayed on their personal device, all without the need for internet. Head to udb.live/beam to have your entire music library everywhere. Beam, it's the sheet.
To be able to say, I can walk in and do this, and if I don't know how to do it yet, I'm going to figure it out. And that the courage that it takes to risk that is, it's always out there. It's always open to try new things and to be the person who dares.
Welcome to Fem Forte, a podcast where we celebrate women in music and performing arts. I'm your host, Amanda DeVries. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is our last episode of Season 3, but I wanted to end this season with a bang. I was so fortunate to have the opportunity to do a live taping of Fem Forte in front of hundreds of students at the Incomparable Marching Workshop at Westchester University. I was joined by a stacked panel of amazing women: Trish Cornett, Shirley Dorittie, Ryals, and Jennifer Leseth. These incredible women are doing awesome things in our community. These women have dominated the music industry, ranging from their involvement in the top world-class drum corps to research publications in various scholastic journals, and so much more. We talk about finding your passions and forging your own successful path in non-traditional ways in your career. Thank you to everyone who has joined me on another journey this season, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Welcome back to Fem Forte podcast. I'm so excited to be here at Westchester University at the Incomparable Marching Band Workshop. And with this being said, I have the amazing Trish Cornett, Ryals, Jennifer Leseth, and Shirley Dorittie. And so thank you all again for being on the show. Tell me, our listeners, the viewers, the people that are here today, a little bit about your background in the performing arts and how you got your start.
I'm going first. All right. So, well, my current job is that I'm the director of bands at Temple University, just up the road in Philadelphia. But my entry point into the whole world of music really was marching band. It was high school marching band. I just fell in love with it. I was a high school drum major, came to a camp very similar to this one, and then went on to college. Picked my college pretty much solely because I wanted to be in the marching band at that particular school. And the fact that they also had a music education program and a good saxophone studio, those were like nice icing on the cake. I wanted to be in the UMass marching band. And so I went to UMass Amherst and became drum major of that marching band, and I taught at the George Parks Drum Major Academy for many years. And I fully was thinking that when I graduated that I would get a job as a high school band director with a marching band. And then the first job that I ever got was at a school. It was a brand new school, and they didn't have a marching band, and they weren't interested in starting one for a variety of reasons, mostly financial. And so I was okay with that at the time. And so I just, worked there for a couple of years, went to graduate school at Northwestern, where I worked with the Northwestern Marching Band, wrote some drill for them. And I was like, okay, my next high school job, I'm going to be a marching band director. And I got a job in Vermont. And marching band is just not quite the same up there because it's 20 degrees in September. So, there was a little bit of a parade component to my job, but there really wasn't there wasn't at all a field show or competition component. And then after that, I went to graduate school again to get my doctorate at the University of Michigan. I worked with the Michigan marching band. I worked with the basketball bands, the volleyball bands, was so ready for my first college teaching job to have a marching band component. And my first job was at the Crane School of Music, SUNY Potsdam. No football team, ergo, no marching band. My second job was at Cal State Fullerton in Southern California. No football team, ergo, no marching band. And so now I'm finally at Temple, where we do have a marching band, but I'm just not in charge of it. So I sort of oversee the entire band program, which includes the marching band. So I like to think of myself as supportive colleague and biggest fan of the marching band at Temple. So that's kind of a little bit about my journey as it relates to the marching arts and how I ended up here.
All right, hi everyone. I really attribute my really entry point into music in general to my mom, because she didn't want me to be somebody kind of lost in the sauce at school. I wasn't really sporty. I liked school okay, you know, that kind of thing. But so when I was in elementary school, it was really important that the elementary band director really connected with my parents, and they really developed a relationship together. So that was really my entry point into the music world and how that worked. And then all through high school, I'm from the Denver area, the southwest suburbs. And so being in Colorado, we're kind of landlocked. There's a lot going on, but kind of in our own little bubble. So that was really interesting to go through that process through high school. I ended up staying at the University of Colorado in Boulder for my undergraduate degree in music, and marching band was pretty strong at my high school, but that was really where I got my first taste at, wow, this is awesome. This is real marching band and having fun with the big group and all of that. And so then I took a dive into Wyoming and marched at the Troopers. I won't tell you the dates, but because that's asking a lady their age. But yeah, so I marched at the Troopers and the Blue Knights Percussion Ensemble, and those were really spectacular, different experiences for different reasons. And then I got my first teaching job in high school. I stayed in the Denver area, and I taught for 7 years there. And then I moved to Chicago and got my master's degree in music ed at the Vandercook College of Music, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to work with Greg Bim. I'm not sure if he's in the audience today, but he's a clinician this week at this amazing opportunity that we all have to participate in, and so that was just a really amazing experience for me. I think I learned more in my time working at that marching band program than I did in so many other aspects of my life. And so we can talk more about that later. But and then I moved back to Colorado after I finished my master's degree. I took another job and I taught there for 5 years in secondary music. And again, back in Colorado, kind of smallish schools with not really big programs like we see in other parts of the country. So it was really about, and this is going to kind of quote Mr. Bim a little bit, that you're there to make your own kingdom the best that it can be, and you're focused in on that world, no matter how many kids you have in your room, and no matter how big the program is. And so that was really kind of my philosophy in life. And then I came out to Philadelphia to do my PhD in music education, and my focus is on trauma-informed music ed. And now I am at just up the road at the Delaware Valley University as the director of bands. So, thank you.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I got my start a little untraditional. My best friend's brother was in the Cavaliers, and I was raised by a single mom, so I'd often spend a lot of time with their family, and they would take me to drum corps shows. And I was very young. I mean, I'm talking like 8 or 9 years old. I was going to drum corps shows, and that's how I got into the industry, understanding, like, being a part of it. So I'm in the color guard. I'm not in music. I'm in color guard in the pageantry side of things. I started marching in the cadet corps. Back then, the Phantom Regiment had a cadet corps, so I was marching in drum corps at like 11 or 12. And I marched Phantom for a long time, and then I went to the cadets out here in the East Coast. And actually, this is going to sound funny, but my high school was like just a football band. They didn't have a competitive marching band. So I didn't even really know that world existed. And we didn't even talk about this, but I met Greg Bim marching at the cadets, and then I taught at Marian Catholic for 9 years, and that was my first experience in teaching marching band. And then from there, I just had so many unbelievable experiences. And for me, it was a place for me to kind of have a home, and also it led to, like, I got to travel internationally, and I got to do all these things. And so I let my career go wherever it was going to go. And now I actually work in the event industry. So I produce events, and I use so much of what I learned in this industry to do that. So it's a little bit untraditional, but it's kind of what got me here. So.
So tapping onto the untraditional. So I grew up in the Concord Blue Devils organization. I was there because my big brother was there. So that's how I got in. And so I was in the color guard as well. And actually was there at the very, very start of it all. And at the point where we were all teaching ourselves. And so I had the opportunity to teach a DCI finalist while I was still in high school and still performing. That's how early, and what a spectacular chance I got early on in it. And since that time, since high school, have worn about every hat that you could possibly wear, because I was told that if you're a girl and you want to make a living or you want to be in this industry, you need to be versatile. And so I just want to pass that on to you. Say yes. Don't wait to be asked. Be as versatile as you can. What I realized was that what I cared about most after all the hats that I've worn, including teaching, writing, sewing, directing, and adjudication. I've been a judge for over 30 years, and I train judges now for the marching band and color guard activities. But what I cared about most was how people get really, really good at what they do, and it doesn't really matter to me what they do. And so I went back and to grad school much later in life and wrote my own graduate program, and I am now working as a performance psychologist. So I work in the field of getting people to perform under pressure, whatever it is that they know, whatever that is that they do, that moment when you have to do it now, really matters to me. And so whether that's a first responder going into a burning building, or if it's someone going on stage, as we just did back there, it's for me, the whole thing is about how do we get to our best stuff when we have to do it in the moment and live under pressure. So that's my story. I am actually now the performance strategy coordinator for the Blue Devils. So I get to go full circle. It's kind of sweet.
That's truly amazing. Just a show of hands, how many of you are actually considering pursuing a career in the performing arts in any sort of way? Yeah? Okay, a large majority. Well, one of the great things about this podcast and what it represents is that you can be involved, and you don't necessarily have to be a performer. You don't have to be a music educator. You could be involved in the various way that these awesome ladies here are involved. I mean, myself, I am also, I was in percussion. I did indoor, did the whole thing, marching band, drumline, and now I'm doing media for Ultimate Drill Book, and now I lead a podcast. So it was still being able to be a part of performing arts in some way that was very non-traditional that you would normally think. So just kind of piggyback off of what you said, as experiences that we've had as women, how did y'all get the opportunities to do all these great, amazing things? Anybody can go.
I mean, I feel like it's really interesting now to think about women in the arts, because I was very fortunate to have a lot of female mentors. Like I had Debbie Tully, and I know these names aren't gonna necessarily mean something to you guys, but it's important for me to say their names. You know, Cindy Baumgartner. I had all these women when I first started that I saw, I didn't see that I couldn't do it, you know? And I think the thing for me when I got on the other side and I started to become an instructor or a designer is I realized how much I was in a room of men and there was only one or two women. But I didn't see that when I was there and these women were in front of me, you know? And so I do think it's important to celebrate those people and to say their names and to make sure that we're aware that they exist, you know? And I just feel also, I think it goes back to, I was raised by a single mother and I saw how hard she worked. That had a big impact on me, you know, and what I wanted to do. And so now I'm very conscious of making sure that, that I celebrate other females doing this. But back then, I just didn't know that you had to do that because I saw it, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll credit, I think, probably my mom, who always just told me growing up that you can do anything you want. Like, it wasn't, well, you should steer away from this or that. She just said, do anything you want to do. And so I just sort of put blinders on and I was like, I want to be drum major of my high school marching band. I want to be drum major of my college marching band. I'm going to be a band director. And hadn't actually ever seen any other women do that, but I just sort of did it because no one told me I couldn't. And it really wasn't until I went to graduate school and I met my mentor at graduate school. Her name's Mallory Thompson, and she is absolutely at the top of this profession. And that was the first time that I remember seeing another woman doing this at that level. And I thought, oh, because I hadn't really considered that before, that maybe I could be a college band director someday. That was not on my radar until I met someone who I saw that was like me, that was doing that. And so that's why, I mean, we talk about this a lot, but representation is just so important. And so now if I can do that for somebody else, I'm happy to do that. And I try to find ways to empower and encourage and support other women whenever I can, and up to and including just programming music by female composers.
Yes.
You know, that's so... I do a lot of guest conducting, honor bands and things like that, district bands, all state bands. And sometimes I'll conduct something and a student will come up to me after and say, you know, I've never played a piece by a female composer, so thank you for programming that piece. And I said, well, I'm so glad you got to do it. And sometimes they'll turn around and say, I think I might want to try writing a piece now. So, I mean, it's just little things like that I feel like we can all put some of those things out in the world. Every little bit helps.
Definitely. And I feel like bringing awareness and, like you said, representation matters is like key, because throughout the course of like this podcast and interviewing many people, so many people come from different upbringings. There are people who have been very fortunate to have the support and be uplifted in whatever they want to do. And then there's some people who, like you said, didn't think that was possible and didn't have the people around them or a community to uplift them to think that, you know, being X, Y, and Z is very possible. So again, more to the fact of why I'm glad all of y'all are here today. Like, you get to be up here, and hopefully whether it's on this stage today or if you listen to an episode and be like, I want to be like that person, or oh my gosh, like I feel or relate to this person in some way, somehow, that it can inspire you to be like, yeah, I can do that too. Absolutely.
And I think if I could just say too, like, I think when I first got on the other side, I just wanted to be like, I didn't want to be the only woman in the room. Like, just ignore it. Like, it's like, here's all the guys and I'm just one of the pack, you know? And I didn't realize that it needed to be celebrated, you know? And I think to give strength to other people. And so I think all those things are important, you know, like the first female vice president and the first African-American president, like those things have to be celebrated so that we make sure the representation is there, you know? And I think I hid behind, I didn't want that to be celebrated, you know? And I'm done hiding, you know what I mean? And I want to celebrate those things. So, yeah.
And speaking to that too about hiding and that kind of thing, it's like when you get to that seat at the table, it's showing up as who you are instead of feeling like you have to be boxed into the expectations of what that kind of masculine or however it is that shows up typically in the room. It's like just showing up and being yourself and not conducting a symphonic band in a suit if you don't want to, or, you know, having loose, crazy blonde hair if you want to, or whatever it is, you know, like it's just whoever you are.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, one of the things that I started to realize was I was very fortunate. I'm adopted, for people who don't know.
Me too.
Yeah, okay. I'm adopted from China, and I have two very amazing parents, and we did grow up in a very privileged white family. And one of the things in doing that and being more aware to some of the facets that minorities face, that women and underrepresented communities face, like that didn't really, I wasn't being shown to that side until I really got out of high school and in college, when I started, you know, moving out of my house and started being exposed to all these different things. And so I say this on the podcast a lot, but like with privilege comes responsibility. And with that, I try to use it in a very positive way. And so for people that have had a nice, you know, a really great upbringing, and, you know, even in educators today have felt they want to provide that to maybe underrepresented communities that may have not had that. I think that's really important to what this podcast brings, as I am literally, like, you know, to be fairly honest with you all, and before coming to today's podcast, like I really did have to do some research on like, okay, who are these people? Because after learning about all the great things that you have all accomplished, I'm like, oh yeah, they deserve to be recognized, celebrated. They deserve to have their voices heard, literally, be shared the mic. And I think that's what this is all about, is giving the mic and sharing the stories and experiences of people who are kicking butt in the industry and really deserve that experience to be shared with others. Because again, it's when you're at a point in success, instead of making it more competitive for others and what they call building that higher fence, you build a longer table for more people to be seated at the table.
I also think it's really important, at least it was with my experience, to not be afraid to be the only whatever in the room. You know, to be able to say, I can walk in and do this, and if I don't know how to do it yet, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that the courage that it takes to risk that is, it's always out there. It's always open to try new things and to be the person who dares.
Exactly. And so, in being that person that has taken risks, have there been any challenges that y'all have faced throughout your career that you want to share your experiences on?
Well, I think part of it is figuring out how to be, to find the thing you love.
Yeah.
Because what I found was, I'm good at a lot of things. Not to boast, but I am. I'm good at a lot of things, but the things I love are a little bit trickier to find. Right. And so for me, that was the challenge. The challenge was being discerning at some point enough to go, I can do that and be good at it, and I can do that and be passionate about it, and say that's what I want to do the rest of my life. So that to me was the hardest challenge, getting focused on what that special thing was for me.
Yeah. One of the things, I wholeheartedly agree to that, because in starting this, I'm very fortunate for our company, you have like 10 to 15% of your time you get to work on a passion project. I always knew I wanted to start a podcast. And to be honest, it was originally going to be about people in the band industry who did like drum corps media and like really geek out on like different kinds of cameras and different kinds of media equipment. And so like I really didn't have any direction of where it wanted to go. But over time, I started listening to other podcasts and started being very passionate about women empowerment and women supporting other women. And through this career that I've had and being able to talk to other women and just hear their awesome stories, I would always joke, can we get a mic in front of you? Like, can we like record this conversation? And so that's where my passion started to drive from, is like, yes, I've always had the passion about music and media and intertwining that together, but like you said, you know, a little bit more niche and a little bit more centralized on centric and focused on what exactly are you supporting, what exactly is that passion that you really want to pursue with, and it was what we're doing now.
And that's where things open up. If you find the thing you love, opportunities do show up.
Yeah.
And it could take a while to get there. I mean, I just actually accepted a new job. I start next Monday, so. But it's literally like my dream job, and it took a while for me to evolve to that point, you know, and I'm just so excited about it. But I would say, like, challenges for me, they were very internal. This is very, like, a personal thing for me, is I think I was very challenged with just being okay with the fact that I made mistakes. I was like the hardest on myself, and I wouldn't let it go, you know, and I spent a lot of time. I mean, I think one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou is like, when you know better, you do better, you know? And I think I spent a lot of time beating myself up. Like, I didn't do that good enough. I didn't do that right. I didn't whatever. And whether that was coming from society or just from me, it's like, I wish I wouldn't have spent so much time in that negative headspace that I created for myself, you know? Because everything in my life literally is so much better and so much easier that I can just be more free of that and that anxiety, you know? So for me, that was, I think, the biggest challenge, but.
Yeah. Well, knowing that you do psychotherapy and focus on mental health, well, just on the advantage of having you both here, picking back off of that, is there advice or ways that you offer as help to when we're feeling like that imposter syndrome, or when we're getting down about ourselves, about like very big like career moves or the risks that we're taking?
You know, I think the biggest advice is change your relationship to mistakes. I thank you for bringing that up because it's the biggest thing. If you can change your relationship to making a mistake and treat it as any time we start something new, we're going to be a beginner at it. And beginning level mistakes are big, ugly, nasty, embarrassing mistakes that are so hard to pick yourself up and keep moving forward with. And yet we will not get to greatness unless we dare to make those beginning level mistakes and then move on from them. So
can I just share a quick thing? And you might have seen this, but there's like a little meme that's going around, and it's like what people think success looks like, and it's just the diagonal line, and it's like what success or growth really looks like, and it's like this whole squiggly line, and sometimes it goes backwards, and then eventually you end up in that place. But it's not a smooth line.
Not at all. Yeah.
And I was going to say, after you take care of yourself, sort of like on an airplane with the whole oxygen mask thing, once you take care of yourself, then you can take care of others. And so that's really what I do a lot in research right now is, okay, the teachers and their mental health and what's going on there, and then how do we bring that to the classroom, because it's going to help all of our students, and then we start taking that look at all of our students with trauma-informed ed and student-centered learning and all of that cultural response stuff. Like all of that kind of folds into that trauma-informed mindset, which is mental health, and making sure that the teachers understand that they matter and their needs need to be met. That transfers to the students. And so.
Yeah, I was going to say that I feel like I'm a much more passionate teacher now that I can forgive myself, and I can be easier on myself. And that goes back to, though, I can't beat myself up about the teacher I used to be, like when you know better, you do better. So, but it's something I'm very aware of, is that my state of mind has a direct effect to, the kids I'm standing in front of. So.
And you will make mistakes.
Yeah, yeah.
And that it's extracting the information from the mistake that is the trick, I think, the greatest trick. And then the other thing that I just want to say in terms of taking care of ourselves and taking care of yourselves is paying attention to what you're already doing that works. Don't let that just slip by unnoticed. But the stuff that you're doing that works is the stuff you want to keep doing. So really paying attention to that, being able to find it, what it feels like, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what the level of enjoyment that you get from it is the cue to keep doing it. And when you do that, you can keep your passion.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, we mentioned briefly about being a woman in a male-dominated industry. What is each and every one of your experiences? Was there anything that you have noticed throughout your career that has sticked out specifically because you are a woman?
I feel personally, I was obviously very much I taught a lot of drum corps and marching bands and stuff. I feel that sometimes walking into a room, designing a show, if my opinion didn't match up, then I kind of had this, well, I'm difficult to deal with, or I'm too emotional or something like that. And so, I feel like there are some things where I feel like if I could go back, the way I approached it may have been a little bit differently, but what I was trying to portray would have stayed the same. But I think for me, that was the biggest challenge, is just the perception of that I didn't agree with everything. And sometimes I was the only one disagreeing, because I had a different perspective. Yeah. And I think too, one thing is, I see now, I do feel like, you doing this is fantastic. These things matter, but every time I feel like we're making a change, then I'll get on Facebook and I'll see a judging panel of all, no offense, but middle-aged white men. And I'm like, if there's anything you do, if you become a band director or you host a show, make sure that you're consciously reaching out. There's a lot of people that can do this. And the thing I think with that is that I don't think anyone's purposely like, let's find all the middle-aged white men to judge the show, but it's their common circle and they're not reaching out of it, And I think that's the part that's so important, is there's people that can do that job. And so just reach out of your comfort zone, so.
And speaking along with that, I would say to you, it is there are so many, as we said, so many different ways of staying connected. And the idea of waiting to be asked is probably something that's going to shorten your career, rather than being the person that says, I could do that and I could do that and I'm going to help out with that. And I might be the only person that looks the way I look or thinks the way I think, but I can add to something. I can bring something new to this. And so I would say your voice is really important, and please speak it, because that's where I think we all had to struggle. We all had to find a way to tolerate our voice being different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's why this is so important, is, you know, not only, again, signifying to the fact that each and every one of our voices is important, but also acknowledging all the highlights that we have achieved. That, you know, how you said that most communities are very closed in and like only stay within that, but raise of hands, who knows that, like, for instance, Shirley is a DCI Hall of Famer. Does anybody know that? Anybody? And that and that's why stuff like this is important. Who knows that Trish was a guest conductor in the President's Own Marine Band? Does anybody? One person? And so it's, you know, and wouldn't you say that these are like awesome things? I mean, I know for me, when I read that, I was like, wow, that is so freaking cool. And that is why, like, you know, we have people from here that have drum corps experience. And how many times do you get to read about that on social media, or these people get to be highlighted? Because of course we know the Scott Jones of the community, but these are people that have done just as amazing things, and again, only adds more to, I need to highlight them. They deserve the spotlight for once. And again, more includes the fact of why what we're talking about is so important.
I can add a couple of challenges, I think,
Yeah.
if I may. I think for a long time, I sort of had a little bit of a nagging sense that, yeah, maybe I'm not really being taken as seriously as I would like to be. But for a really long time, I don't know if anybody else experienced this, I just attributed it to being young. I was like, oh, I'm young, and that's why, you know, they're just treating me like that. But it's probably about 10 years ago, and I finished my doctorate, and I had been teaching college for a few years, and I was like, well, I'm not that young anymore. And so maybe there's something else going on. And I'm very fortunate in that I haven't had any huge, terrible things happen to me, like I know a lot of women have in any industry, really. But it's those little microaggressions, right? We have to be really careful about that. I was guest conducting a group a few years ago, and it was this kind of an interesting situation. But it was just I had like a 20-minute rehearsal, and then we had like an hour, and then there was the concert. It was just a really, really quick turnaround. So I got up on the podium and I just started like doing my thing, right? I was like, okay, we're gonna fix this, and a kid, a very well-intentioned kid, came up to me after and said like, wow, I was just like really surprised to see you, like, you know, rehearsing us and stuff. And I was like, why? Like, you were surprised to see me doing my job? Like, did you say that to the male guest conductor? Like, were you surprised by that? So, and this poor kid, he was trying to give me a compliment, but you know, it's just those little things that I think, I'm looking forward to the day where those little things don't happen anymore. And the other thing that comes to mind with this is sometimes I'll get an invitation to do an all-state band or a district or a region band, and someone will say, oh, it's just so great to have a woman in front of the ensemble, which I don't disagree with. And I guess at the end of the day, I'd rather get a job because I'm a woman than not get a job because I'm a woman. But again, I'm looking forward to the time when it's not a thing anymore, right? When it's just, there's so much diversity in what we're doing that it's just no one really notices. And I don't want it to be a big thing. And that to me, if by the end of my career, if we're closer to that point, I think I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're making great progress, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I agree. Like, there's two different kind of sides to this where it's like, yes, we should be celebrating women, but women shouldn't, like, just because I am a woman, I shouldn't be like extra celebrated for. And it does suck that, like, in society today, we're not there yet. It's getting a little bit better, but you know, it's the whole equality versus equity conversation is there's still so much that needs to happen on the equity sides of things for equality to really happen. So
Yeah, and I think it's even not so much about it being celebrated, it's the assumption that it wasn't a woman. You know what I
Yep.
mean? That, and I will say this is like, it relates, but in my day job, I worked for the College of American Pathologists. I was a meeting and event planner for them. And so I deal with a lot of doctors every day. And sometimes the names come through and I don't know the gender, you know? And I would see that a lot of people would just assume it was a male. And a lot of times it wasn't, it was a female. And I had to be very conscious of like using a neutral pronoun until I knew, you know, which gender it was. But it was interesting to me because it's not even that I think we need to be extra celebrated. It's just the assumption that it's always a man doing the thing that's successful or the thing, you know? So I'm trying to be conscious of that. And I do think we've come a long way, but I think all of us who are in the trenches are the ones that have to help move it along, you know? So.
And I think it's great that we're here in front of literally the next generation.
Yeah.
And like even for hi. Even for, you know, some of you men in the audience, like some of you may not know that this exists, and I think it's so great that you have like it means so much to me personally that you have chosen to come here today to learn more about this topic. Because yeah, I could have all women in the auditorium and it would be great, but like the fact that you like also believe that this conversation is really important, like is very humbling for me, and like again just provide like helps push the needle, and because you are the future, and I'm glad that, you know, it gives me faith that the future is being pushed in the right direction.
Yeah, you are. And it's, I mean, I'm very excited about it with all the things I've seen this generation do for just community in general, you know, so I think it's really exciting.
So with that being said, we're about to wrap up here in a little bit, but what piece of advice could you give our audience, our listeners, the people watching at home, of ways to help uplift and bring these conversations more into focus for the next generation? It'll help uplift women and help provide these really more important conversations.
What I would like to say is, and it speaks to the idea of most of us solve a problem with what we already know how to do, and we invite people into the process that are usually the people we already know. And that propagates throughout all industries. When there's a hire that needs to be made or a consultant that needs to be hired, it's usually from a group that is either a group you already know or someone who's referred from a group you already know. And so one of the things I would suggest is see if you can find another voice. If you're in a position to bring someone else into the creative process or whatever process you're in, see if you can find another voice outside the group you already know so that you expand your circles.
Yeah, and to that, building relationships and walking the journey with your students and other colleagues, and relying on colleagues in your district or other admins in your building or other teachers and that kind of thing. Having that support system in place, and then building that into your own music program, making sure that there's communication and relationships built within your own students and within your own teams, like sections and stuff like that. But, you know, creatively matching so that there's ways for those relationships in that journey to be shared together is so important. It's really important in my research that I'm seeing in data, but then also in our lived experiences that walking alone is never great. So lifting your students and yourselves up in those ways.
Awesome.
I mean, to that point, you know, walking alone, you know, I think earlier in my career, I was kind of the only woman in a lot of rooms. And as I've been doing this longer, I've found a community of women who are like-minded, who are doing the things that I'm doing. And that's really important to me, those friendships and those connections, and just kind of relying on them and allowing them to rely on me, and then, you know, helping empower each other, lift each other up. That's been really important to me over the years, too.
Awesome.
Yeah. I would say too, to be patient, you know, with yourself and with your journey and with the process. And I think too, like all of you guys, and no matter what industry you go into, you know, like Shirley said, like open yourself up to people who aren't, you know, people that you wouldn't normally have a conversation with, or just open yourself up, because it lends itself to a lot of really great things. So.
Yeah. Well, where can our listeners, audience here, and viewers find you? Is there social media, website, email?
I have a Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find the Temple Wind Symphony on YouTube. So.
I have a website called performandachieve.com. And there you can find a book that I wrote about, it's called Performing at the Top of Your Game, Practical Strategies for When It Really Counts. And I also offer consultations and one-on-one workshops for performance anxiety and getting to the top of the game that you're at, whatever game that is that you play.
I have an Instagram, but it's mostly my dog, so. But he's real cute. It's Jennifer and BJ. My dog's name is BJ, so you can find me on Instagram.
And then Lauren?
I'm on social media, and then my research is published online and in journals.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you once again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Fem Forte. Fem Forte is produced and hosted by me, Amanda DeFries. Music is by Humans Win. To learn more about our guests, sponsors, and get more resources, go to femfortepodcast.com and follow us on social media at Fem Forte Podcast.